So the Biden administration is requesting $835 billion in the one of the largest Pentagon budgets in history. Despite that gigantic request, I'm expecting that we will receive a torrent of letters from the services and the combatant commands asking for billions more through the so-called unfunded priorities list. That is the Pentagon's term for it, but I just call them wish lists. The DoD doesn't have to follow the same rules as every other federal agency, which is other agencies have to balance their must-haves against their nice-to-haves and come up with a budget. Instead, each part of DoD also submits a second list of things that didn't go through the budget process that they still want funded. So in January, I sent a letter to Secretary Austin, along with Senators Braun and Lee and King, telling DoD not to send Congress any wish lists as part of this year's budget process. Last year, some parts of DoD did not put anything on their wish list. And so my questions today are about whether or not the two of you will choose that route this year. So General Dickinson, you run Space Command. Will you be submitting additional funding requests on top of the budget that DoD sent to Congress this morning?
Thank you, Senator. I will submit a list, and there's a couple of reasons why I will. So being a combatant command that's only about 3.5 years old, we are continuing to evolve. We are continuing to mature. I described a little bit earlier how we're getting more people, where our infrastructure is growing, and what we have facing us right now is a very dynamic threat in the space domain, our pacing challenge being China. And so with that, we find ourselves in a situation where we try to grow a little bit quicker, and sometimes when we do that, because of the threat, it'll cost a little more money and money that I haven't forecasted because I wasn't able to look at that inside of the budget cycle. That's the first piece of that. The second piece of it is, as I look to round out some of the capabilities that I need, specifically space domain awareness, we are finding in the commercial market that there are companies that can provide that type of capability to us. And we are taking that capability in our commercial integrations strategy and bringing those partners on board. Sometimes I don't have that, how much that's going to cost in a contract inside of the 2-year budget cycle that we're in. So those are some things that I'm doing that would be in my IPL. One would be, how do I grow my command faster to meet the threat? And second, how do I bring on capabilities that I might not have forecasted that I've come to realize?
So the budget that has just been submitted this morning, you're telling me is already out of date for your command, and that you want to go outside the budget process. You don't want to have to do the 10-year cost estimates. You want to go outside that to just plus up your budget. Is that right?
It is. The reason I would submit an UPL is to make sure that I can grow as the threat grows.
But that's the point of the budget process, is that you go to the Department of Defense, you say, here's how I need to grow, they give you a number, and then you make the appropriate choices within that number. And you're just saying they didn't give you a big enough number, so you want to do an end run in order to plus up your budget? Is that what you're saying, General?
I'm saying that the space domain, the characterization of what I see going on in space with the advancements and of the threat from the Chinese in space warrant me to be able to account for that inside of that.
But that's the point of going through the DoD budgeting process. You've been given a number by DoD, and you've just decided to go outside that. I want to also be sure to get to General Cotton. You run our nation's strategic command, responsible for our nuclear weapons arsenal. Now, during your confirmation, you told me, quote, "As the commander, my job is to ensure that I can execute my mission with the dollars I have been given." General Cotton, same question to you as General Dickinson. Will you be submitting additional funding requests on top of the budget that DoD sent to Congress this morning?
Thank you, Senator. I think I had that caveat there, too, as far as talking about emerging responsibilities and emerging threats. No different than what General Dickinson said, the 2-year cycle, things change within the 2-year cycle. I've been asked this morning on how am I going to handle looking at the new emerging threats that we have just seen in probably the last 60 days of what's going on within the strategic threat picture. So right now, we're going to have to look to see if we're going to submit a UPL to be able to get after some of the threats that we're seeing today. I am responsible for EMS, the spectrum management piece. We are right there on the 2-year cycle where we didn't do that 2 years ago for the 24 budget to understand how we're going to be able to set that up to be able to get after some problems. So I stand by what I said as a commander. I will always try to make sure that I can be able to do my job within my means. But I always, as all commanders, we all have emerging threats or needs that might change the calculus on what our previous budget had.
Well, I appreciate that, and I am out of town, but I just want to say, I think we should be asking DoD to write budgets that reflect their actual priorities, and that they should know as much about these emerging threats as the individual commanders do, and that we should not be doing a dual estimate here of budgets where you have one number and then you just come in and ask for a lot of additional money. I think that's wrong.